Meghan Markle's world crumbled in an instant. The phone call came like a thunderclap, cold, calculated, and utterly final. Jeff Bezos, the titan who could make or break empires, had decided no reconsideration, no negotiations. Just a single, ruthless decision that shattered months of meticulously crafted plans. In Montecito, she broke down, tears streaming as the realization hit. One of the last pillars of her Hollywood comeback had vanished. Social media exploded, whispers turned to roars, and the entire industry seemed to hold its breath. But behind closed doors, what really happened? What was said in those rooms that would change everything for the Sussexes? And more importantly, what comes next could rewrite the rules of celebrity power forever. It all began with a whisper, a rumor slipping through the polished corridors of Amazon Studios, barely audible at first. But whispers have a way of becoming storms, and by the time it reached Meghan Markle in Montecito, the air was electric with tension. Insiders say she had been counting on this deal with Jeff Bezos as her big Hollywood comeback, the moment that would silence critics, trolls, and naysayers alike. But now that moment was slipping through her fingers. "Harry, it's gone," she whispered into the phone, voice trembling, the words barely audible over the hum of the Montecito mansion. Harry, pacing on the other end, ran his hands through his hair, frustrated and helpless. "No, this can't be happening. They can't just pull out," he said, the anger barely contained. The reality was brutal. Amazon, one of the last major platforms still willing to bet on the Sussex brand, had decided they were no longer worth the risk. Sources say that in those weeks leading up to the decision, tension had been building. Meetings ran late, calls went unanswered, and emails that once overflowed with enthusiasm suddenly became perfunctory, cold, and clipped. Production executives whispered about Meghan's unfocused pitches, about Harry's attempts to inject royal gravitas into every idea. One insider described a meeting where Meghan presented a visionary docu-series, promising to redefine celebrity storytelling forever, but the room sat in stunned silence, confused by the sprawling concepts. "It was glossy, but it didn't land," said one fictional source. "It was like presenting Oprah, but without the substance." Fans on social media began sensing the shift even before it was official. Twitter threads exploded with speculation. Is Amazon canceling the Sussexes? Did Bezos just say no to Meghan's empire? TikTok edits popped up in minutes, fans and critics dissecting every detail of her last public appearances. Inside the mansion, every ping of a phone or notification sent Meghan spiraling further into anxiety. One source close to the Sussexes claimed Meghan spent hours locked away, pacing from room to room, talking aloud to herself, trying to analyze every detail. "Why no? After all we've done?" "This was supposed to be the moment," she reportedly cried. Harry, meanwhile, tried to keep a semblance of composure, reminding her that setbacks were part of the business, but even he admitted privately that he was shaken. Each failed partnership, the cooling interest from Netflix, the Spotify retreat, and now this, was like a stone thrown into the fragile foundation they had built. Hollywood insiders allegedly spoke in hushed tones about the Sussex chaos factor, a growing perception that the duo's ideas were high risk, high drama, but low return. One fictional email, leaked to our narrative, read, "The Sussex pitch is unpredictable, emotional, scattered, not quantifiable. Proceed with extreme caution." The walls of Montecito seemed to reverberate with the echoes of what could have been, the grandiose plans slowly collapsing under the weight of corporate reality. Even the Bezos decision itself was described as surgical, strategic, precise, and deliberately silent. No press release, no fanfare, just a cold, final severing of ties at the exact moment Amazon greenlit new projects with more established, proven creators. The message was clear. The Sussex brand was now a liability, a fading star in an industry that only rewards certainty. And yet, in this chaos, Meghan refused to sit idle. Her friends and aides reportedly watched as she scribbled notes, drafted speeches, and tried to construct a counter-narrative that could reclaim control. But every call met with silence. Every ally suddenly unavailable. And as the Montecito mansion settled into a tense quiet, the world outside erupted, Hollywood buzzed, social media exploded, and the Sussex's future, once bright with promise, now teetered on the edge of uncertainty. In less than 48 hours, one whispered decision had thrown an entire empire into question. And Meghan, caught between heartbreak and determination, knew one thing: this was just the beginning. The morning after the news broke, Montecito was anything but calm. Meghan's usually polished composure had fractured into something raw and frantic. Friends inside the mansion described her pacing, muttering under her breath, the echoes of betrayal filling the grand halls. How could he? She asked, voice cracking, referring to Bezos. After everything we pitched, after every meeting, he just walked away. Harry tried to steady her, but even he couldn't hide the anger simmering beneath his surface. Every plan they had, every alliance they counted on, suddenly felt like sand slipping through their fingers. Rumors began circulating fast within Hollywood circles. Insiders claimed the Sussex pitch had gone off the rails in that fateful final meeting. One executive supposedly whispered to a colleague, "It's like they're chasing the Oprah effect again, but without the story, without the substance. It's chaos in a box." According to these leaks, Meghan had arrived confident, almost triumphant, believing she was about to seal her comeback. But confidence couldn't mask the cracks. Every slide in her presentation seemed to blur into the next. Every bold statement was met with polite nods that hid skepticism. The sense of betrayal was not only internal. Sources allege that even longtime Hollywood contacts began distancing themselves. Emails went unanswered. Calls were returned hours later, if at all. One fictional aide recalled, "It felt like the walls were closing in. Everyone who said they had our back suddenly disappeared. Even our so-called friends started tiptoeing around, afraid to get involved." The silence, in this case, was more telling than any rejection letter. It screamed judgment and caution, a warning to anyone still daring to bet on the Sussex brand. Meanwhile, social media had erupted into chaos. TikTok compilations dissected Meghan's every reaction, while Twitter threads speculated endlessly. Was this the moment the Sussexes finally fell from Hollywood grace? Fan accounts tried to defend her, calling out the industry for its cruelty, while critics gleefully roasted every misstep. The storm of opinion reached Montecito's gates, and it was deafening. One fictional leaked DM purportedly read, "If Bezos won't invest, nobody will. The royal narrative is tired. The numbers don't lie." That line, true or not, landed like a dagger in the heart of their carefully constructed empire. Inside the mansion, Meghan reportedly lashed out in fits of frustration. She slammed doors, threw down pens, and scribbled notes furiously. Harry, pacing the marble floors, tried to reason with her, reminding her that this wasn't personal. It was business. But for Meghan, it felt deeply personal. She had believed this partnership would cement her legacy, her place in Hollywood, her power. Instead, it felt like the floor had given way beneath her. And then came the whispers of another betrayal. Insiders claimed that Bezos had not only pulled out, but had also quietly encouraged other investors to reconsider their interest. Netflix, once lukewarm but still engaged, allegedly held emergency meetings to reassess their involvement. Spotify reportedly reevaluated projects quietly. Every step forward now seemed littered with unseen obstacles, a chain reaction triggered by one man's calculated decision. Yet, even in this maelstrom, Meghan refused to surrender. She began drafting counter-messages, planning her next move, plotting how to reclaim the narrative before the world could define it for her. But each attempt was met with silence from the industry. Sources describe a house tense with anticipation, the air thick with frustration and fear. Even the staff, usually discreet, whispered about the energy inside, something raw, something unstable, something powerful waiting to strike back. By the end of the second day, the Sussexes were isolated, surrounded by rumors and under scrutiny from every corner. The world outside had assumed judgment, while inside, a storm of betrayal, regret, and fierce determination brewed. For Meghan, it was a moment of revelation. Hollywood was not her friend, billionaires were not easily impressed, and trust was fleeting. But if one thing was clear, she wasn't finished. Not yet. The empire she had built on charisma, influence, and royal intrigue had been shaken to its core. But the next move, hidden behind closed doors, promised to be even more explosive. By the third day, the atmosphere in Montecito had transformed from frantic panic to something far darker, tense, haunted, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Meghan Markle, once radiant with confidence, had become a force of raw emotion, pacing endlessly, phone in hand, leaving a trail of crumpled notes behind her. Harry, usually the calm counterpart, now sat in silence, staring at screens that blinked with endless speculation. Every headline, every social media post felt like a verdict. Thereover, one viral tweet read, "The Sussex era is done," whispered another. And somewhere deep inside, Meghan knew the world might believe it. Then came the leaks, supposedly from an anonymous Amazon insider. DMs surfaced, claiming Meghan's final pitch had descended into chaos. "It was beautiful but scattered," one read. "They wanted inspiration. We wanted execution." Another purported transcript suggested a tense exchange. "Why should we invest in you now?" An executive asked sharply. "We redefine influence. We create culture. We inspire millions," Meghan replied, voice steady but fierce. The silence that followed was deafening, the kind that signals judgment even before words are spoken. The fallout wasn't confined to the mansion. Hollywood trembled. Streaming executives held emergency meetings. Netflix reportedly debated whether to pause negotiations. Spotify reconsidered projects. Friends, allies, and even consultants suddenly went quiet, vanishing like smoke. One fictional aide said, "It was as if everyone knew. Touch this story, and you get burned." Inside Montecito, Meghan's desperation shifted into determination. She drafted messages, calls, even entire campaigns to reclaim control. Harry tried to intervene. "We need patience," he urged. "One misstep now and it all collapses." But Meghan's eyes were blazing, unyielding. "Patience won't save us," she said, voice tight. "Action will." Then came the bombshell. Jeff Bezos, silent for days, released a single, cold statement through a spokesperson. "We are reviewing our partnerships and adjusting future commitments accordingly." No names, no explanations, just enough ambiguity to send Hollywood into a frenzy. The statement instantly went viral. Meghan froze, her hand hovering over her phone. Harry's face drained of color. Every scenario they had imagined was thrown into disarray. The real shock, insiders claim, came from the network of industry whispers. Calls between executives leaked. "If Bezos doubts them, we need to reconsider. Nobody wants to be last holding the investment." Another, "The Sussex brand is fading faster than we thought. Move cautiously." Suddenly, the empire they had built on royalty, media savvy, and influence felt precarious, as if a single misstep could topple it entirely. By nightfall, Meghan reportedly retreated to the private study, phone in one hand, laptop in another, drafting what some sources called a comeback blueprint. Emails, pitches, influencer alliances, everything laid bare in meticulous planning. But just as the first paragraph was written, another message arrived. A subtle, cryptic warning from an unnamed Hollywood insider. "The world is watching. They've decided. What you do next may be too late." In that moment, Montecito held its breath. Meghan's tears had dried, replaced by a fierce resolve. Harry watched, torn between fear and admiration, realizing that whatever happened next, the Sussexes were entering a battle far larger than Amazon, far larger than Hollywood, far larger than they had ever imagined. And then the silence returned. The phones stopped ringing. The world waited. Headlines screamed uncertainty. Bezos cuts ties. Sussex future unknown. And in the quiet, a chilling truth settled over the mansion. The game had changed, the rules had shifted, and for the first time, Meghan and Harry faced the terrifying reality that even power, privilege, and ambition could not guarantee survival. Somewhere in the mansion, Meghan whispered to herself, "They think it's over. They have no idea what's coming." And with that, the curtain fell on this chapter, leaving the world desperate to know what comes next could change everything, or end it all. The storm in Montecito isn't over. Meghan Markle's tears, Harry's silent panic, the shattered Amazon deal. This was just the opening act. One titan walked away, and the ripple effect has Hollywood, streaming platforms, and royal insiders all holding their breath. The emotional high point? Watching the Sussexes face the collapse of one of their last pillars. The moment when power, privilege, and ambition collided with cold corporate reality. But what happens next is still shrouded in mystery. Will Meghan reclaim control? Will Harry find a way to stabilize the empire? Or is this the beginning of the end for the Sussex brand? Leaked DMs and insider whispers suggest a counter-strategy is already forming behind closed doors, one that could shock the world. If you want to see the Sussexes' next move, comment below. This might be the end of one chapter, but what happens next changes everything. Are they ready to fight back, or is the empire crumbling for good?